Hello, my dear friends. Take a slow breath and allow your body to become still. There is nothing you need to do right now, and nothing you need to focus on. Tonight we are gently stepping into a quiet medieval night, a time long before alarms, electric light, and fixed sleep schedules. We are exploring the strange and unfamiliar ways medieval people slept, not in a dramatic way, but calmly, slowly, and with curiosity. As the world outside fades into darkness, imagine you are living in a medieval village. The sun has set completely and darkness has taken over the land. There are no glowing screens, no streetlights, and no clocks telling you what time it is. Sleep does not begin at a set hour. Instead, it follows the night itself. When darkness deepens, people naturally begin to rest. This alone feels strange to us today, but for medieval people it was normal. Sleep was not controlled by time. It was guided by nature. One of the strangest habits to modern minds is that medieval people did not usually sleep straight through the night. Instead, they experienced what historians now call segmented sleep. People would go to sleep a few hours after sunset, rest deeply for several hours, and then wake up naturally in the middle of the night. This waking was calm and expected, not a problem. During this quiet time, people might pray, think, talk softly, check animals, or simply sit quietly by the fire. After some time, they would return to sleep for a second rest until morning. This middle-of-the-night waking was not seen as insomnia or disturbance. It was considered normal and even useful. The world was silent during these hours. No work was expected. No pressure existed to fall back asleep quickly. The body rested in cycles, and the mind drifted gently between sleep and awareness. Because there was no fear of being awake at night, returning to sleep felt easy and natural. Beds themselves were also very different from what we imagine today. Many medieval people slept on straw mattresses, wooden platforms, or simple piles of bedding. These beds were shared, often by entire families. Privacy was rare. Children slept beside parents, and sometimes even servants or guests shared the same sleeping space. This closeness was not considered strange. It provided warmth, safety, and comfort in cold stone houses. Clothing during sleep was another unusual habit. Many medieval people slept fully clothed, especially in colder months. Nightwear as we know it did not really exist for most people. Removing clothes completely was uncommon, not only because of cold, but also because clothing was valuable and limited. Sleeping dressed made it easier to wake quickly if needed, and kept the body warm through long nights. The position of sleep also feels unusual to us today. Many medieval people slept slightly upright, supported by pillows or rolled bedding. This was partly due to beliefs about health. Lying completely flat was sometimes thought to invite illness or breathing problems. Sleeping semi-upright was believed to protect the body and help digestion. These beliefs shaped how rest looked and felt. As the night grew deeper, the medieval world became incredibly quiet. Fires burned low. Animals settled. Villages rested together. Sleep was not isolated or silent in the modern sense, but shared and gentle. Small sounds, breathing, and movement were normal and comforting. Silence was never complete, and it did not need to be. As you imagine this strange but calm medieval night, notice how different it feels from modern sleep. There is no rush to fall asleep, no fear of waking, and no pressure to be still for hours. Sleep moves slowly, naturally, guided by darkness and the body's own rhythm. As the night grows quiet now, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to remember the details. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. In the next part, we will explore medieval beliefs about sleep, dreams, and the strange fears and comforts people associated with nighttime rest. For now, remain still, let the quiet deepen, let rest continue in its own time. In the medieval world, sleep was not something that happened in one long, unbroken stretch the way many people expect it to happen today. Instead, sleep often came in pieces, gently spreading across the night. People would lie down after sunset and fall into what we now call the first sleep. This sleep was usually deep and heavy, shaped by darkness, physical tiredness, and the quiet of the world outside. The body relaxed fully, and the mind drifted easily, because there was nothing else to do and nowhere else to go. This first sleep could last several hours, carrying people into the deepest rest of the night. Then quite naturally, many people woke up. Not suddenly and not with alarm or fear, but calmly and quietly, as if the body had simply finished one part of its rest. Eyes opened slowly. Breathing stayed relaxed. The room was still dark, lit only by faint moonlight or the soft glow of dying embers. This waking period was not seen as a problem. It was a normal part of life. People did not panic or worry about being awake. They expected it. During this quiet time in the middle of the night, medieval people often did simple, gentle activities. Some would sit quietly and think. Others might pray softly, believing this was a peaceful time to speak to God. Couples sometimes talked, sharing thoughts that felt too quiet or personal for the busy daylight hours. Some people checked on animals, stirred the fire, or prepared small tasks for the morning. Everything moved slowly. Voices stayed low. Movements were careful and unhurried. After this calm waking period, people returned to bed for what was known as the second sleep. This sleep was usually lighter than the first, but still restful. Dreams were more common during this phase, drifting gently through the mind. The body continued to recover, even if sleep felt less deep. When morning finally arrived, people did not feel disturbed or deprived. This broken pattern of sleep was simply how the body worked in a world guided by natural light and darkness. What feels strange to us today felt completely normal then. No one counted hours or worried about sleeping enough. There were no clocks glowing in the dark, no schedules demanding rest at exact times. Sleep followed the night itself. Darkness invited rest. Waking invited quiet reflection. Returning to sleep felt natural and easy because there was no pressure attached to it. As you imagine this slow rhythm, notice how gentle it feels. There is no rush to fall back asleep, no frustration about waking, just a soft flow between rest and awareness. Medieval people did not fight their sleep patterns. They lived with them. And because of this acceptance, rest often felt deeper and more peaceful than we might expect. As the night grows quiet again, allow this idea to settle softly. Imagine yourself waking briefly in a calm, dark room, feeling safe, unhurried, and relaxed. There is nothing to fix and nowhere to go. When sleep returns, it comes gently, without effort. Let your body remain still now. Let your breathing stay slow and natural. Allow rest to continue in its own time, just as it did for people long ago. Imagine you are living in a medieval town as the sun slowly disappears behind stone rooftops. Night does not arrive suddenly, but gently, as candles are lit and daily work fades away. In this world, people do not sleep the way we do today. They do not lie down once and remain asleep until morning. Instead, sleep comes in parts, moving slowly through the night. Medieval people often practiced what we now call segmented sleep, though for them it was simply normal life. They would fall asleep shortly after darkness arrived, resting deeply for several hours, and then wake naturally in the middle of the night. This middle of the night waking was not seen as a problem or a disorder. It was expected. Homes were quiet, streets empty, and the world felt still. People would wake calmly, not startled, not anxious. Some would sit up in bed, say a quiet prayer, or reflect on their thoughts. Others might tend to a fire, check on animals, or even visit neighbors. This wakeful time was gentle and unhurried, a peaceful pause between two sleeps rather than an interruption. After this quiet period, which could last an hour or more, people would return to bed for their second sleep. This second rest was often lighter, but still restorative. Dreams were sometimes said to come more strongly during this phase. The body and mind accepted this rhythm naturally, guided by darkness and the absence of artificial light. Without clocks or schedules, sleep followed the body's own signals rather than strict rules. This habit shaped how medieval people experienced rest. There was no pressure to stay asleep all night. Waking was not feared. It was part of the natural flow of night. Because of this, anxiety around sleep was rare. People trusted that rest would return when it was ready. The night felt long and spacious, not something to rush through. As you imagine this pattern now, notice how calm it feels. There is no struggle against wakefulness, no frustration, only acceptance. This is one of the strangest and most fascinating sleep habits of medieval people. What feels weird to us today was once completely normal, woven gently into daily life. As the night grows quiet again, let this image soften and drift away. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and easy. In the next part, we will gently explore how medieval people often slept fully clothed and what that tells us about their world. For now, remain still. Let rest continue naturally. In the medieval world, the way people slept was very different from what we imagine today, and many of their habits would feel strange or uncomfortable to modern minds. One of the most unusual things was how closely people slept together. Privacy at night was rare, not because people lacked manners, but because closeness meant warmth, safety, and survival. Families often slept in the same room, sometimes even in the same bed. Parents, children, and sometimes extended relatives rested side by side, sharing body heat during cold nights. This closeness was not considered awkward or inappropriate. It was normal, practical, and comforting in a world where nights were long and cold. Beds themselves were very different from modern beds. Most medieval people did not sleep on soft mattresses. Instead, they slept on straw-filled sacks, wooden platforms, or simple pallets placed on the floor. The surface was firm and uneven, but bodies adapted over time. People learned to sleep in positions that reduced pressure and discomfort. Many slept slightly upright, propped with pillows or rolled cloth, because lying completely flat was believed to be unhealthy. It was thought that sleeping flat allowed bad air or illness to enter the body, especially through the mouth. This belief shaped sleeping posture for centuries. Another strange habit was sleeping in clothing. Medieval people rarely slept without clothes. Removing garments completely felt unsafe and impractical. Night air was cold, and fires were kept low to reduce risk. Clothing acted as insulation. Even wealthy people slept in layers, wearing nightshirts, caps, and sometimes even belts. Undressing fully was associated more with illness or vulnerability than comfort. Being clothed made people feel protected, both physically and emotionally. Shared beds were also common beyond family life. Travelers, workers, and even strangers often slept in the same bed at inns. Beds were expensive, space was limited, and sharing was expected. There was no assumption of intimacy. Sleeping together was simply sleeping. People turned away from each other, respected unspoken boundaries, and rested quietly. The idea of needing a separate bed for personal comfort did not exist in the same way it does today. The position of the body during sleep was also influenced by beliefs about health and morality. Sleeping curled tightly was thought to trap bad humors inside the body, while sleeping too spread out was seen as careless. Many people slept on their sides, knees slightly bent, arms close to the chest. This position conserved warmth and felt secure. The body naturally adopted shapes that felt protective, almost like returning to a resting pose used since childhood. As the night grew deeper, movement during sleep was common. People shifted often, waking lightly and adjusting position. This was normal and expected. Sleep was not one long, deep state, but a gentle cycle of rest, waking, and returning to rest. Sharing space made these movements easier to accept. One person's movement did not disturb others as much as it might today, because everyone followed the same rhythm. As you imagine this now, picture a dim medieval room. Straw mattresses laid close together. Soft breathing filling the space. Bodies resting near one another, not for comfort alone, but for warmth, safety, and familiarity. There is no rush to sleep perfectly. Just rest, shared and accepted. As the night grows quiet again, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to judge it or compare it to modern life. Just let it exist in your mind for a moment, then drift away. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow. Allow rest to continue gently in its own time. One of the strangest things for a modern listener to imagine is how rarely medieval people slept alone. Privacy, as we understand it today, barely existed. In most medieval homes, entire families slept in the same room, and often in the same bed. Parents, children, sometimes grandparents, and occasionally even guests would share one sleeping space. This was not considered strange or uncomfortable. It was normal, practical, and necessary. Homes were small, heating was expensive, and shared warmth made cold nights easier to survive. Sleep was a communal activity, not a private one. In villages and towns, even strangers might share sleeping spaces. Inns often had large rooms with several beds, and sometimes people slept side by side with those they had never met before. Travelers, merchants, and pilgrims accepted this without question. The idea of personal space during sleep simply did not exist in the same way. Being close to others at night felt safer than being alone. Darkness brought uncertainty, and shared presence reduced fear. The sounds of breathing, shifting bodies, and quiet movement created a sense of reassurance rather than disturbance. This closeness shaped how medieval people experienced sleep. Nighttime was filled with small interruptions, but these interruptions were expected. Someone turning over, a child waking briefly, or quiet conversation in the dark did not break sleep completely. People drifted in and out of rest naturally. Sleep was flexible, not strict. There was no expectation of complete silence or uninterrupted rest. The body adapted to these conditions, learning to rest even with movement and sound nearby. Clothing during sleep was also different. Many medieval people slept in the same clothes they wore during the day, especially the poor. Nightwear was simple or non-existent. Removing clothing completely was uncommon, partly because of cold and partly because modesty still mattered, even among family. Bedding was basic, often straw mattresses or rough blankets, offering little separation between bodies. This physical closeness reinforced the idea that sleep was a shared human experience rather than a solitary retreat. Shared sleep also meant shared nighttime routines. Before sleeping, families might talk quietly, pray together, or simply lie in silence as the fire faded. Waking during the night did not cause anxiety. Someone might get up briefly, adjust the fire, check on animals, or speak softly before returning to rest. These awakenings were part of normal life. The night was not seen as a single block of unconsciousness, but as a long, calm period of rest with gentle pauses. As you imagine this now, notice how different it feels from modern sleep. There is less isolation, less control, and less pressure. Sleep happens among others, shaped by warmth, presence, and routine, rather than silence and separation. This shared closeness is one of the strangest and most fascinating sleep habits of medieval people. As the night grows quiet again, allow this image of shared sleep to soften and fade. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. In the next part, we will gently explore how medieval beliefs, superstitions, and fears shaped the way people thought about sleep and dreams. For now, remain calm. Let rest continue gently in its own time. In medieval times, sleep was never fully separated from fear and faith. As people lay down at night, their minds were often filled with quiet beliefs about what the darkness might hold. The night was not seen as empty or harmless. It was believed to be a time when unseen forces moved more freely. Because of this, many medieval people slept with small rituals meant to protect them. Some whispered prayers before closing their eyes. Others touched religious objects kept close to their sleeping place. These habits were not dramatic or fearful in a loud way. They were calm, repeated actions that brought comfort and a sense of control in a world that often felt uncertain. Many people believed sleep itself made the body vulnerable. While awake, a person could watch, listen, and react. While asleep, the body was open and unguarded. Because of this, people often slept lightly, waking easily at small sounds. Deep, heavy sleep was not always seen as a good thing. Light sleep meant awareness, and awareness meant safety. This is one reason medieval sleep was often broken into parts. Waking during the night was normal and expected, not a problem to fix. Sounds played an important role in how people slept. Complete silence was rare and often uncomfortable. Familiar sounds like animals shifting, wind moving through wood, or quiet human movement were reassuring. These sounds meant life was continuing as expected. Silence, on the other hand, could feel unsettling. It suggested something was wrong. Because of this, people did not try to block out noise. They slept with it, letting familiar sounds blend into the background and guide their rest. Faith also shaped sleep positions and habits. Some people preferred to sleep in positions they believed were spiritually safer. Others avoided certain postures because they were associated with death or illness. Beds, when they existed, were often arranged carefully, sometimes facing a certain direction for spiritual reasons. These choices were not questioned. They were simply part of how sleep was understood. As you imagine this medieval night, notice how different it feels from modern sleep. Rest was not about comfort alone. It was about protection, awareness, and belief. Sleep was shared with the world around it, not separated from it. The night was not something to escape, but something to move through carefully and calmly. As the night grows quiet now, allow these old habits to fade softly into the background. You do not need to remember them. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Allow rest to continue naturally, without effort or concern. In the medieval world, sleep was never fully separated from the presence of death and illness. This may sound unsettling at first, but for medieval people, it was simply part of everyday life. Homes were small, crowded, and often shared by many generations. When someone fell ill, they did not go to a separate room or a distant hospital. They stayed where they were, often lying down in the same space where others slept. Because of this, healthy people frequently slept close to the sick, listening to their breathing through the night, aware of coughing, fever, and weakness, yet unable to create distance. Sleep happened anyway, not because it was comfortable, but because the body had no other choice. Death itself was also closer than it is today. When someone passed away, the body was often kept inside the home for a period of time before burial. Family members continued their routines, including sleeping, in the same space. Children, adults, and elders rested knowing that death was nearby, not hidden or removed. This did not cause constant panic because it was familiar. Instead, it created a different relationship with sleep. Sleep was not seen as escape from reality, but as a pause within it. The night did not remove fear. It simply existed alongside it. Illness was common, and medical understanding was limited. People believed that bad air, spirits, or imbalance in the body could cause disease. Because of this, sleeping habits were shaped by belief as much as by comfort. Windows were sometimes kept open even in cold weather to allow bad air to escape. In other cases, windows were tightly closed to keep illness out. People slept surrounded by herbs, cloth charms, or religious symbols placed near the bed. These objects were not decorations. They were believed to protect the sleeper during the vulnerable hours of the night. Fear also shaped how people positioned their bodies while sleeping. Many believed that sleeping flat on the back made the body more open to spirits or illness. Others thought certain directions were safer than others. As a result, people often slept in slightly raised positions with the head elevated or turned to one side. This was not about comfort. It was about protection. The body was arranged carefully, even when tired, because sleep was believed to be a moment when unseen forces were strongest. Because life expectancy was short, many people went to sleep each night knowing there was a real chance they might not wake up. This awareness was not dramatic or emotional. It was accepted quietly. Evening prayers were common, not only for faith, but for comfort. People asked for protection during sleep, forgiveness before rest, and peace if death came during the night. Sleep and death were closely connected in medieval thinking, and this connection shaped how seriously bedtime was taken. Despite all this, medieval people still slept. They slept because the body demanded it. They slept through sickness, through fear, through uncertainty. Sleep was not perfect or peaceful, but it was persistent. Even with coughing nearby, even with illness in the room, even with death close at hand, sleep arrived in small pieces. This ability to rest in difficult conditions shows how deeply human sleep adapts to reality. As you imagine these medieval nights, notice how different they feel from modern ones. Sleep was not protected or isolated. It was shared with life in all its forms, including its hardest moments. This is one of the strangest and most human sleep habits of medieval people, the ability to rest even when comfort, safety, and certainty were never guaranteed. As the night grows quieter now, allow this heavy image to soften and fade. You do not need to carry it with you. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Allow rest to continue calmly, just as medieval people did, even when the world around them was uncertain. In the medieval world, sleep was never just sleep. It was deeply connected to fear, belief, and long-held habit. When night arrived, people did not simply lie down and rest without thought. The darkness itself carried meaning. It was a time when dangers were believed to move more freely, when unseen forces were thought to wander, and when the world felt less controlled. Because of this, many medieval people prepared for sleep the same way they prepared for travel or work, with intention and caution. Sleep was approached slowly, carefully, and often with ritual. Many people believed that the sleeping body was vulnerable, not only to thieves or animals, but to spirits, illness, and bad fortune. Because of this fear, some slept fully dressed, including belts, cloaks, or head coverings. Removing clothes felt unsafe, as if it left the body exposed to harm. Others slept holding objects believed to offer protection, such as religious charms, small crosses, or items blessed by the church. These objects were not decoration. They were meant to guard the sleeper through the long hours of darkness. Prayer was a common part of going to bed. Before lying down, people often spoke quiet words asking for protection through the night. Some families prayed together, while others whispered alone in the dark. Sleep was seen as a small kind of death, because the body lay still and unaware. Waking up in the morning was considered a blessing, not a guarantee. Because of this belief, bedtime prayers were serious and sincere, meant to prepare the soul as much as the body. Sleeping positions were also shaped by belief. Many medieval people avoided sleeping flat on their backs because it was associated with death. Lying on the side, especially the right side, was considered safer and more natural. Some believed it helped digestion, while others believed it kept the heart protected. These ideas were passed down quietly through families, becoming habit rather than rule. People slept the way they were taught, without questioning why. Fear of the night also influenced where people slept. Windows were small and often closed tightly. Doors were locked early. Animals were sometimes kept close, even inside the home, because their presence offered warmth and an early warning if something moved outside. The sounds of breathing, shifting bodies, and animals settling nearby created a sense of security. Complete silence was uncomfortable. Noise meant life was still present. Sleep was often light and broken, not because people wanted it that way, but because the mind stayed alert. A sudden sound could wake the whole household. Someone would listen, decide there was no danger, and then slowly return to rest. This pattern happened night after night, shaping a kind of sleep that moved in waves rather than deep, uninterrupted rest. As you imagine this kind of night, notice how different it feels from modern sleep. Sleep was not about comfort or relaxation. It was about endurance, safety, and survival. And yet people adapted. They learned to rest within fear, belief, and habit. This is what made medieval sleep so strange, so different, and yet completely normal for the time. As the night grows quiet once more, allow these images to soften and fade. You do not need to remember them clearly. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. In the next part, we will gently explore how seasons and weather changed the way medieval people slept, always calmly, always slowly. For now, remain still. Let the quiet deepen. Let rest continue in its own time. As medieval nights slowly settled over towns and villages, sleep was never just about rest. It was deeply connected to fear, faith, and acceptance. People did not go to sleep expecting comfort. They went to sleep expecting uncertainty. The night was dark, in a way we no longer experience, complete and heavy, with no artificial light to soften it. Once candles were blown out, the world disappeared almost entirely. This darkness shaped how people felt about sleep. It was not always peaceful, but it was familiar. People accepted it as part of life, just as they accepted hunger, cold, and illness. Fear was a quiet companion during medieval sleep. Not loud panic, but a steady awareness that danger could exist beyond the walls. Wild animals, thieves, fire, illness, and sudden death were all possibilities. Because of this, many people slept lightly. Deep, uninterrupted sleep was rare. The body stayed partially alert, ready to wake if something felt wrong. This made sleep shorter and more fragmented, but it was considered normal. Waking during the night was not seen as a problem. It was simply part of sleeping. Faith played a powerful role in how people faced the night. Before sleeping, many whispered prayers or repeated familiar religious words. These rituals were not rushed. They were slow and comforting, meant to protect the sleeper through the darkness. People believed sleep made the soul vulnerable. Prayers acted like a shield, calming the mind and easing fear. Even children learned these habits early, growing up with the idea that sleep required spiritual protection as much as physical rest. Beds, when they existed, were often shared by many people. Entire families slept together in the same space. This closeness reduced fear. The presence of others made the night feel safer. Shared warmth also helped during cold seasons. Privacy was rare, but comfort came from familiarity. Hearing another person breathe nearby helped the mind relax. Silence was rarely complete, and that was reassuring rather than disturbing. People also believed the body was vulnerable during sleep in strange ways. Some thought evil spirits moved more freely at night. Others believed certain dreams carried messages or warnings. Because of this, sleep was taken seriously but not gently. It was approached with caution. Sleeping positions mattered to some. Facing certain directions or sleeping in certain postures was avoided by those who believed it might invite bad dreams or illness. As you imagine this medieval night, notice how different it feels from modern sleep. There is no expectation of perfect rest. There is no pressure to sleep deeply for a certain number of hours. Sleep comes in pieces, shaped by fear, belief, and habit. And yet, people survived. The body adapted. Rest happened slowly, imperfectly, but consistently enough to continue life. As the night grows quiet now, allow this strange, careful approach to sleep to fade gently. You do not need to live this way. You only need to rest. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and natural. Allow sleep to continue softly in its own calm rhythm. As medieval night slowly settled over towns, villages, and countryside, sleep was never something people entered casually. Night carried uncertainty, darkness, and unknown sounds. So medieval people surrounded their sleep with habits that may seem strange today, but felt deeply comforting to them. Before lying down, many people followed small rituals meant to protect both body and soul. Prayers were whispered softly, sometimes memorized since childhood, sometimes spoken in simple words asking for safety through the night. These prayers were not dramatic or emotional. They were steady and routine, repeated night after night until they became as natural as breathing. Sleep was seen as a vulnerable state, almost like a small death, so entering it required care. Beds, when they existed at all, were shared and surrounded by familiar objects. People often slept fully clothed or nearly clothed, believing that sudden danger might require them to wake and move quickly. Removing all clothing felt unsafe. Heavy night garments also protected against cold and insects. Shoes were sometimes kept close by, and personal items were placed within reach. This created a sense of readiness even during rest. Sleep was not about letting go completely. It was about resting while staying prepared. Many medieval people believed that spirits, illness, or bad luck could visit during sleep, so they placed protective items near their beds. Small religious symbols, herbs, or charms were kept close. These objects did not distract the mind. Instead, they calmed it. Belief itself acted as a form of comfort. Knowing that something was there to guard them allowed people to relax more deeply. Whether these protections truly worked was less important than the peace they brought. Noise was another accepted part of medieval sleep. Silence was rare and sometimes unsettling. Animals moved nearby. Fires crackled. People shifted and breathed in shared spaces. These sounds became part of the night's rhythm. Complete silence could feel unnatural, even threatening. Familiar noise signaled that life continued safely around them. This constant background sound made waking less frightening and falling back asleep easier. Sleep positions also carried meaning. Some believed sleeping flat on the back invited bad dreams or illness, while others avoided sleeping on certain sides based on tradition or advice passed through generations. Pillows, when available, were often small and firm, meant more for head positioning than comfort. Softness was not the goal. Order was. The body was arranged deliberately, as if sleep required structure to remain safe. Waking during the night was expected and accepted. People often woke naturally after a few hours of rest. This time was not seen as a problem. Some prayed quietly, checked the fire, or spoke softly with others before returning to sleep. This pattern of broken sleep felt normal. There was no anxiety about falling back asleep. The night was long, and rest would return when it was ready. As you imagine this medieval night, notice how different the relationship with sleep feels. Sleep is not something rushed or forced. It is approached carefully, protected gently, and allowed to come and go. These habits may seem strange now, but they were built from fear, faith, and familiarity all working together to make the night feel survivable. As the night grows quiet once more, allow these old beliefs and rituals to fade gently into the background. You do not need to remember them. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow rest to continue in its own calm way, just as medieval people once did, trusting that sleep will return when it is ready. In the medieval world, sleep was rarely a private or protected moment. Most people did not sleep alone, and even when they did, they were often aware that others were nearby. Homes were small, walls were thin, and entire families shared one sleeping space. Parents, children, elders, and sometimes even animals rested in the same room. Because of this, sleep became something that was shared and quietly observed. Movements were noticed, breathing was heard, and waking during the night was normal and expected. There was little embarrassment in this closeness because it was all people had ever known. This shared sleeping environment shaped how people experienced rest. Falling asleep was not about silence or isolation, but about settling into a familiar rhythm of bodies and sounds. Someone shifting position, a child turning over, or a quiet cough in the dark did not break sleep completely. These sounds were part of nighttime life. The mind learned to accept them, and because of that, people often returned to sleep easily after waking. Sleep was flexible, moving gently in and out rather than staying deep and unbroken. Because sleep was shared, it was also sometimes watched. Elders noticed if someone slept restlessly. Parents noticed if a child woke often. Changes in sleep were seen as signs of health, stress, or spiritual concern. There was no medical understanding of sleep disorders, but people paid attention to how others rested. This attention was not invasive, it was part of communal care. Sleep belonged to the group, not just the individual. Nighttime itself was not fully separate from social life. People often woke for prayer, quiet conversation, or simple tasks during the night. This did not feel strange. It was normal to rest, wake briefly, and rest again. Sleep was not expected to be one long stretch. Instead, it was broken into soft segments, each surrounded by darkness and quiet. As you imagine this shared medieval night, notice how different it feels from modern ideas of sleep. There is no pressure to sleep perfectly, no fear of waking, just bodies resting together, adjusting gently, and returning to sleep when ready. This is one of the strangest and most forgotten sleep habits of medieval people. Sleep was not guarded or isolated, but openly shared. As the night grows quiet again, allow this image of shared rest to soften and fade. You do not need to think about it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and easy. Allow rest to continue naturally, just as it once did for people long ago. In the medieval world, sleep was often seen as something strangely close to death, and this belief quietly shaped how people rested at night. Darkness was deep, silence was heavy, and life itself felt fragile. When people lay down to sleep, they did not take waking up for granted. Many believed that sleep was a small rehearsal for death. a time when the soul drifted away from the body and might not return. Because of this, bedtime carried a serious and thoughtful mood. People prayed before sleeping not only for protection, but also in case they did not wake again. This belief did not cause panic, but it created a deep awareness of how vulnerable the sleeping body truly was. Beds, when they existed, were shared, not only for warmth but for reassurance. Sleeping alone felt unsafe. A still body in the dark was thought to be exposed to unseen dangers, both physical and spiritual. Sharing a bed meant someone would notice if breathing stopped, if nightmares became violent, or if illness suddenly worsened. Sleep was not a private experience. It was communal, watched over quietly by others in the room. This closeness made sleep feel protected, even when the belief that sleep resembled death lingered in the background. Because sleep was seen as a vulnerable state, people rarely slept flat on their backs for long periods. Many believed that lying too still, especially face up, invited danger. Some feared it could trap the soul or prevent it from returning properly. Others believed it made the body too open to illness or spirits. As a result, people often slept slightly raised, turned to the side, or propped with pillows and rolled cloths. These positions were uncomfortable by modern standards, but they helped people feel safer during the night. The presence of death was also very real in daily life. Illness spread easily, medicine was limited, and people of all ages died suddenly. Because of this, sleep was never fully relaxed. Even when tired, the mind stayed gently alert, listening to the sounds of the household. A cough, a restless movement, or a sudden silence could signal danger. Waking during the night was common, not only because of segmented sleep, but because people checked on each other. Sleep was lighter, broken, and cautious. Candles or small lamps were often left burning through the night, not for light but as reassurance. Complete darkness felt threatening. A small flame reminded people that life was still present, that time was still moving forward. It also made it easier to check on others without fully waking. The soft flicker of light became part of the sleeping environment, shaping dreams and creating long shadows that moved slowly across walls. Sleep happened alongside this gentle awareness, never fully disconnected from the world. Dreams were taken seriously in this context. Because sleep felt close to death, dreams were seen as messages from beyond, warnings or signs of spiritual meaning. People discussed dreams in the morning, especially troubling ones. A bad dream could change behavior for the entire day. Sleep was not just rest, it was an experience that carried meaning and risk. This made bedtime feel important, even solemn. As you imagine this medieval night, feel how different it is from modern sleep. There is no sense of escape or comfort. Sleep is careful, shared, and deeply connected to beliefs about life and death. The body rests, but the mind remains aware. This strange closeness between sleep and death is one of the most unusual and fascinating aspects of medieval sleep habits. As the night grows quiet again, allow this heavy belief to soften and drift away. You do not need to carry it with you. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow rest to continue gently, safely, and calmly, far removed from the fears of the past. As medieval nights slowly settled over towns and villages, sleep was rarely something that felt simple or empty. For medieval people, bedtime was deeply connected to belief, fear, and habit. The darkness of night was not just the absence of daylight. It was a time when the world felt unpredictable and full of unseen forces. Because of this, sleep habits often included small rituals meant to protect the body and the soul. People did not simply lie down and close their eyes. They prepared themselves carefully, sometimes with prayer, sometimes with objects placed nearby, and sometimes with repeated routines that brought a sense of control to an uncertain night. Many medieval people believed that sleep left the body vulnerable. When the eyes were closed and the mind drifted, spirits, illness, or bad dreams were thought to have easier access. Because of this fear, bedtime prayers were common and taken seriously. These prayers were not rushed or casual. They were spoken slowly, often memorized from childhood and repeated every night in the same order. The repetition itself was comforting. It signaled that the day was ending safely and that the night, though dangerous, could be faced with faith. Objects were often kept close while sleeping. Some people slept with religious symbols, small charms, or written prayers placed near the bed or under the pillow. These items were believed to guard against nightmares, illness, or sudden death during sleep. Others kept everyday tools or personal belongings close, not for protection from spirits, but for reassurance. Familiar objects made strange nights feel more manageable. Sleep was not only physical rest, it was emotional protection. The position of the body during sleep was also influenced by belief. Many medieval people avoided sleeping flat on their backs, fearing it could invite bad dreams or sudden breathing problems. Side sleeping was often preferred, especially on the right side, which was sometimes associated with moral goodness or religious symbolism. These habits were passed down through observation rather than instruction. Children learned how to sleep by watching adults and copying what felt safe. Nighttime awakenings were common and expected. Medieval people did not assume sleep should be continuous. Waking in the middle of the night was normal and even useful. Some used this quiet time to pray, reflect, or check on animals and fires. Others simply sat quietly, letting thoughts pass before returning to rest. This pattern of broken sleep did not cause anxiety. It was accepted as part of how the night worked. As you imagine these medieval nights, notice how different they feel from modern sleep. Sleep was not about comfort or convenience. It was about safety, belief, and routine. These habits may seem strange now, but they helped people feel grounded in a world that felt fragile after dark. The rituals, prayers, and careful positions gave structure to the night, making sleep possible even when fear lingered nearby. As the night grows quiet once more, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to remember the details. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Allow rest to continue naturally, just as medieval people once did, drifting gently through the quiet hours of the night. In medieval times, sleep was rarely a private experience. Most people did not sleep alone, and the idea of having a personal bedroom was almost unknown for ordinary families. Homes were small, often made of wood or stone, with only one main room. At night, the same space used for eating, working, and talking during the day became a sleeping place for everyone. Parents, children, relatives, and sometimes even visitors all lay down together, sharing warmth and space. Privacy was not expected and silence was not required. Sleep happened alongside breathing bodies, soft movements, and the quiet sounds of others resting nearby. Beds themselves were often shared as well. A single bed might hold 2, 3, or even more people, especially during cold seasons. This was partly practical because shared body heat made long winter nights easier to endure, and partly cultural because closeness felt normal and safe. People were used to sleeping near others from childhood, so it did not feel strange or uncomfortable. In fact, sleeping alone could feel unsettling, as if something was missing. The presence of others helped the mind relax, making it easier to fall asleep in a world that was dark and often uncertain. This shared sleep also meant shared rhythms. People went to sleep around the same time, woke during the night around the same time, and often rose together before dawn. If someone woke up, adjusted a blanket, or whispered a prayer, it was simply part of the night. These small interruptions were not seen as problems. Sleep was not expected to be deep and unbroken. It was flexible, moving gently between rest and quiet awareness. Because everyone experienced the night together, no one worried about waking up briefly. It was normal. Even among strangers, shared sleeping spaces were common. Inns, monasteries, and large households often placed travelers and guests together in communal rooms. People slept side by side with those they had never met before. Trust was placed not in privacy, but in routine and social rules. This might feel strange today, but in medieval life it was practical and accepted. Sleep adapted to social life, rather than being separated from it. As you imagine this shared night, notice how different it feels from modern sleep. There is less control, less isolation, but more warmth and familiarity. Sleep is woven into community, not hidden away. This is another strange and fascinating part of medieval sleep habits. The night was not something faced alone. It was something shared. As the night grows quiet now, let this image soften and drift away. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and easy. Allow rest to continue gently, just as it once did in these crowded, quiet medieval nights. In the medieval world, sleep was rarely a private experience. The idea of sleeping alone in a quiet room was almost unknown for most people. Houses were small, often built with just 1 or 2 rooms, and entire families slept together in the same space. Parents, children, relatives, and sometimes even guests shared the night side by side. Privacy was not expected or desired. Sleep was something communal, something shared, something that happened together. This closeness felt normal and safe even if it seems strange to us today. Beds themselves were often shared as well. It was common for multiple people to sleep in the same bed, not just married couples, but siblings, friends, travelers, and sometimes strangers. Inns regularly placed several people into one bed to save space and warmth. This was not considered uncomfortable or inappropriate. Warmth mattered more than personal space, especially during cold nights. Bodies provided heat, and heat meant survival. Sleep was practical, not personal. For poorer families, even beds were a luxury. Many slept on straw-filled mattresses laid directly on the floor. These straw beds were reused for long periods, sometimes filled with insects, dust, and dampness. Still, people accepted this as normal. Sleep did not need to be clean or quiet to be restful. The body adapted to discomfort because there was no alternative. Even on hard or crowded surfaces, people rested as deeply as their lives allowed. Nighttime noise was also unavoidable. Snoring, coughing, talking in sleep, and movement were all part of the shared sleeping space. Animals were sometimes kept indoors at night for warmth or safety, adding more sound and smell. Instead of disturbing sleep, these noises became familiar background signals of life continuing safely through the night. Silence was not required for rest. In fact, complete silence might have felt unsettling. Because sleep was shared, people developed a strong tolerance for interruption. Waking briefly during the night was normal and unremarkable. Someone might shift position, get up to tend the fire, soothe a child, or speak quietly before lying down again. These interruptions did not ruin sleep. The body simply returned to rest when it could. Sleep flowed around life instead of stopping for it. This lack of privacy also meant that sleep positions and habits were visible to others. People learned from watching each other. Children grew up seeing adults sleep, wake, pray, talk, and return to rest. Sleep habits were passed down naturally, without instruction. There was no pressure to sleep correctly. There was only the shared rhythm of night. As you imagine this crowded medieval night, notice how different it feels from modern sleep. Yet for them, it felt safe and ordinary. Being surrounded by others meant protection. It meant warmth. It meant belonging. Sleep was not something done alone with thoughts racing in silence. It was something wrapped in human presence. As the night grows quiet now, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to imagine it clearly. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. In the next part, we will continue exploring even stranger medieval sleep customs, always calmly, always slowly. In the medieval world, sleep was not always separated from illness, aging, or even death. People often slept in the same rooms where others were sick, injured, or nearing the end of life. Homes were small, space was limited, and privacy was rare. A single room might serve as a kitchen during the day, a gathering space in the evening, and a sleeping place at night. If someone in the household became ill, they stayed where they were. Others continued to sleep nearby, breathing the same air, sharing the same warmth. This closeness was not seen as strange. It was simply how life was arranged. Sleep happened wherever life was happening. For medieval people, the presence of sickness during sleep was normal. Coughing, groaning, and restless movement during the night were familiar sounds. These noises did not always cause alarm or fear. They were part of the night, just like the crackle of a fire or the wind outside. People learned to sleep through them. The body adapted. Sleep became flexible, light in some moments and deeper in others. There was no expectation of silence or uninterrupted rest. Night was understood as something shared, not controlled. In some cases, people even slept in rooms where the dead were kept temporarily. When someone died, the body often remained in the home for a short time before burial. Family members stayed close, sometimes sleeping in the same space. This was not done out of fear, but out of familiarity and ritual. Death was part of daily life, and it did not completely disrupt sleep. The body was treated with respect, but not removed immediately from the living space. Night continued. People rested nearby, trusting that this was part of the natural order. This habit shaped how medieval people thought about sleep and the night. Sleep was not something protected from reality. It existed alongside pain, illness, and loss. Because of this, sleep became less fragile. People did not expect perfect conditions. They learned to rest even when the environment was uncomfortable or emotionally heavy. The mind did not fight these conditions. It accepted them. Sleeping close to others in all states of life also created a different relationship with fear. The night was not filled with avoidance. It was filled with presence. People were used to being near bodies, breathing, coughing, aging, and eventually stopping. This familiarity softened fear and allowed sleep to come even in difficult circumstances. The mind did not panic at every sound. It recognized them as part of life continuing through the night. As you imagine these medieval nights, picture a small room, dimly lit, filled with quiet movement and soft sounds. Some people sleep deeply. Others shift and wake briefly. Someone breathes slowly nearby. Someone else coughs softly. The night holds all of this without judgment. Sleep moves through the room in waves, not perfectly, but steadily. As the night grows quiet now, let this image soften and fade. You do not need to stay with it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Allow rest to continue calmly, the way it always has, even in imperfect conditions. In the medieval world, sleep rarely happened in isolation. Privacy, as we understand it today, was almost non-existent, and this made nighttime a shared experience in ways that now feel strange and uncomfortable. Families slept together in the same room, often in the same bed. Parents, children, grandparents, and sometimes even visitors lay side by side, bodies close for warmth and safety. Space was limited, and warmth was precious. The idea of sleeping alone felt wasteful and unnecessary. The presence of others brought comfort, protection, and reassurance, especially during long, dark nights. This closeness extended beyond family members. In inns, travelers shared beds with strangers. People who had never met before would lie down next to each other, trusting that sleep would pass without trouble. This was not seen as unusual or risky. It was simply practical. Beds were expensive, rooms were few. Sleep was about rest, not personal boundaries. The body adapted to this closeness, learning to rest even with unfamiliar breathing, movement, and warmth nearby. Even more unusual to modern ears is how close the medieval dead remained to the living. In many homes, the sick or dying stayed in the same rooms where others slept. When death occurred, the body was often kept in the house for a time before burial. Family members slept nearby, sometimes even in the same room during this period. This was not considered frightening. Death was a familiar part of life, and its presence did not interrupt the rhythm of rest. Sleep continued, even in the quiet company of loss. Churchyards were also close to daily life. Many people lived near them, walked through them, and sometimes slept near them while traveling. The boundary between the living and the dead was thin and accepted. Nighttime did not separate these worlds as strongly as it does today. Sleep happened wherever safety and warmth could be found, regardless of surroundings. Because of this closeness, medieval people developed a different relationship with fear at night. Darkness was not empty. It was filled with familiar presence. The breathing of others, the creak of wooden walls, the soft sounds of animals nearby all blended into a known background. The mind rested because nothing felt truly unknown. Sleep did not require silence. It required familiarity. As you imagine this shared nighttime world, notice how different it feels. Crowded, warm, and quietly alive. This strange closeness is another reason medieval sleep habits feel so unusual today. Yet for them, it was normal, comforting, and deeply human. As the night grows quiet now, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Allow rest to continue calmly, in its own time. As the medieval night settled in, sleep was never just about rest. It was deeply mixed with fear, belief, and habit, all woven together so closely that people rarely questioned them. For many medieval people, the night was considered a dangerous time, not because of constant violence, but because of the unknown. Darkness hid things, sounds traveled differently, shadows moved in ways that felt alive. Because of this, people often went to sleep already tense, their bodies shaped by centuries of shared fear passed quietly from one generation to the next. Sleep was entered carefully, not casually. One of the strangest habits was how strongly faith controlled the moment of falling asleep. Many people believed that sleep itself left the soul vulnerable. Closing the eyes meant loosening control, and that made prayer feel necessary. People often said specific prayers only meant for nighttime, spoken slowly, sometimes repeated again and again until sleep came. These prayers were not dramatic. They were routine, almost mechanical, learned in childhood and carried into old age. Saying them brought comfort, not excitement. The familiar words helped the mind feel protected, allowing rest to begin. Because fear and faith were so closely connected, sleeping positions were often chosen for spiritual reasons rather than comfort. Many believed sleeping flat on the back invited bad dreams or unwanted spiritual attention. Some preferred to sleep slightly turned or propped up, believing this position kept the body safer. Others avoided sleeping fully stretched out, feeling it was too close to the posture of death. These habits were rarely explained. They were simply followed night after night, because everyone else did the same. Another strange aspect of medieval sleep was how people accepted poor rest as normal. Waking multiple times during the night was expected. Creaking wood, animals, distant voices, or changes in temperature regularly pulled people out of sleep. Instead of fighting this, they accepted it. They might whisper a prayer, adjust their position, or simply lie awake quietly until sleep returned. There was no frustration about broken sleep. It was understood as part of life. Habit shaped everything. People went to bed when darkness fell, not because they were tired, but because there was nothing else to do. They woke when light returned, not because they felt rested, but because the day demanded it. Sleep followed the world, not the body. This made rest feel less personal and more communal, shared by everyone under the same night sky. As you imagine these medieval nights, notice how different they feel from modern sleep. There is no effort to improve rest, no attempt to control it. Sleep happens inside belief, routine, and acceptance. It is strange, uncomfortable, and imperfect, yet completely normal to the people living it. As the night grows quiet again, allow this image to soften. Let the medieval world fade gently. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and calm. Rest does not need to be perfect. It only needs to continue. In the medieval world, sleep did not exist far away from death, sickness, and decay. These things were not hidden from daily life, and they were not separated from the night. People often slept in homes where someone had recently died, sometimes in the same room, sometimes in the same bed where the body had been laid out earlier. This was not seen as frightening or strange. It was simply part of life. Death was close, familiar, and expected, and sleep happened beside it without much thought. The mind did not associate rest with comfort or purity, but with necessity. When night came, the body rested wherever it could, even if the surroundings carried reminders of loss. Homes were small, crowded, and shared by many generations. Sick family members often remained in the same sleeping space as everyone else. Coughing, fever, and labored breathing were common nighttime sounds. Sleep happened through these noises, not away from them. The body learned to rest despite discomfort, smell, and fear. There was no separate space for recovery or isolation. The night included everything the day included, just quieter. This constant closeness to illness shaped how people experienced sleep. It was lighter, interrupted, and accepted as imperfect. Graveyards were also close to daily life, often directly beside churches or homes. Some people even slept near them while traveling or guarding property. This closeness to death did not create panic. Instead, it normalized the idea that rest and mortality were connected. Sleep itself was often described as a small form of death, a temporary stillness before waking again. This belief made people less afraid of broken sleep and more accepting of drifting in and out of rest. The medieval mind did not expect sleep to protect them from reality. It was not a retreat from the world. It was simply another state within it. Night brought darkness, but not escape. Sounds, smells, and worries continued, just softened. Because of this, people learned to sleep through conditions that modern minds would find disturbing. Rest was not about comfort. It was about endurance. As you imagine these nights, notice how different the expectations were. Sleep was not sacred or delicate. It was practical. The body rested because it had to, not because conditions were ideal. This is another reason medieval sleep habits feel strange to us today. They accepted what could not be changed and rested anyway. As the night grows quiet now, allow this image to fade gently. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and natural. Allow rest to continue calmly, without effort. In medieval times, sleep was never fully separate from the idea of death. People lived closely with illness, loss, and uncertainty, and this shaped how they thought about the night. Going to sleep was often seen as a small surrender, a moment where the soul became quiet and vulnerable. Many believed that sleep was a temporary leaving of the body, and waking up was a kind of return. Because of this belief, bedtime was treated seriously, not casually. People often prayed before sleep, asking for protection through the night, because there was no guarantee that morning would come. This belief made sleep feel heavy with meaning, even when the body was exhausted. Beds were often placed in shared spaces, sometimes even in the same room where sick or dying family members rested. The boundary between sleep and death was thin. Children grew up seeing illness and loss as part of everyday life, and this made night feel different from how we experience it today. Silence at night was not always comforting. It could feel like waiting. Because of this, people often slept close to others, listening to breathing and small movements, finding reassurance in shared presence. Being alone at night was unsettling, not peaceful. Religion deeply shaped medieval sleep habits. Many believed evil forces were stronger at night when darkness covered the world. Candles, crosses, prayers, and holy symbols were kept near beds. Some people slept with religious objects in their hands or under their pillows, believing this would protect their soul while they slept. Even dreams were seen as messages, warnings, or spiritual experiences. A strange dream might be discussed seriously in the morning, not brushed away. Sleep was not just rest. It was a spiritual state that connected the human world to something unseen. The position of the body during sleep also carried meaning. Many people avoided sleeping flat on their backs, believing it was too close to the position of the dead. Some preferred sleeping slightly upright, supported by pillows or wooden frames, especially the elderly or sick. This position was thought to make breathing easier and reduce the risk of dying in sleep. Beds themselves were often short, not designed for full stretching, reinforcing this semi-upright posture. To modern eyes, it looks uncomfortable, but to medieval people it felt safer. Another strange habit was how segmented sleep was accepted and expected. People did not expect to sleep continuously through the night. They went to sleep early, woke naturally after a few hours, stayed awake quietly, and then returned to sleep. This middle waking period was used for prayer, reflection, quiet conversation, or small tasks. This was not considered insomnia. It was normal. Night was long, and sleep moved in waves. Trying to force uninterrupted sleep was not part of medieval thinking. The body rested when it rested, and waking was simply part of the rhythm. Cold also shaped sleep in uncomfortable ways. Homes were poorly insulated and winters were harsh. People slept in layers of clothing, sometimes wearing hats or wrapping cloth around their heads. Bed curtains were used not for privacy, but for warmth, creating a small enclosed space to trap heat. Multiple people often slept in the same bed, not out of intimacy, but necessity. Warmth mattered more than comfort. Sleep was about surviving the night, not enjoying it. Animals were often nearby as well. In rural areas, livestock slept close to humans, sometimes in the same building. The sounds of animals breathing, moving, or shifting in the dark became part of the nighttime environment. These sounds were familiar and comforting. Complete silence was rare. Sleep happened alongside life, not away from it. As you imagine these medieval nights, notice how different they feel from modern sleep. Sleep was not private, not silent, and not separate from fear, faith, and survival. It was shared, meaningful, and deeply connected to how people understood the world. This is what made medieval sleep habits feel strange, heavy, and very human. As the night grows quiet now, let this long image soften. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and natural. Allow rest to continue gently, just as it has always done, across centuries of human life. By the later medieval period, sleep had become something far more complex than simple rest. For medieval people, the night was not just a time to close the eyes. It was a space filled with meaning, fear, belief, and routine. Sleep was shaped not only by tired bodies, but by how people understood the world around them. Darkness was powerful. It hid danger, but it also brought closeness to faith. People did not simply fall asleep. They prepared themselves carefully, mentally and spiritually for what the night might bring. Many medieval people believed that sleep left the soul vulnerable. When the body rested, the spirit was thought to wander, becoming open to influence. Because of this, bedtime rituals were taken very seriously. People prayed before sleeping, sometimes aloud, sometimes silently, asking for protection through the night. These prayers were not rushed. They were slow and familiar, repeated every night in the same words. This repetition helped calm the mind, much like modern bedtime routines, but with a deep sense of spiritual safety attached to it. Beds, when they existed, were often shared. Whole families slept together, sometimes parents, children, and even servants in the same room. Privacy was rare, but closeness brought comfort. People believed that sleeping near others protected them from unseen dangers of the night. Loneliness during sleep was often feared more than discomfort. Being alone in the dark was believed to invite bad dreams, evil thoughts, or harmful spirits. So closeness became part of sleep itself. Another strange habit was sleeping in a half-upright position. Many medieval people believed lying completely flat was dangerous. It was thought to encourage bad dreams, illness, or even sudden death during sleep. Pillows were used to raise the head and chest slightly. Some slept almost sitting up, especially the elderly. This position was believed to help breathing and protect the heart. Comfort mattered less than safety and belief. Sleep was also broken into parts. People did not expect to sleep through the entire night. They had a first sleep and a second sleep. After the first few hours, many would wake naturally. This waking time was quiet and normal. People prayed again, talked softly, checked fires, or simply sat in silence. Only later would they return to bed for the second sleep. This pattern was not considered strange at all. It was the natural rhythm of night. Dreams were taken very seriously. A strange dream could change how a person behaved the next day. Some dreams were believed to be messages from God. Others were warnings. Because of this, sleep was not fully trusted. People approached it with caution and respect. A bad dream was not ignored. It was discussed, interpreted, sometimes even confessed. This made sleep feel important, but also slightly uneasy. The sleeping environment itself reflected fear and belief. Protective objects were often kept near the bed. Religious symbols, small crosses, holy texts, or charms were placed close to the sleeper. These items were believed to guard against nightmares, illness, and unseen forces. Even the direction of the bed mattered. Some believed sleeping facing east was safer, while other directions were avoided. Nighttime sounds were interpreted differently than today. A creaking house, an animal outside, or wind through cracks could be taken as signs. Silence itself could feel threatening. Complete quiet made people alert. Soft, familiar sounds like breathing of others or crackling of a fire made sleep easier. The medieval night was never fully trusted, so sleep remained light and aware. As you imagine these habits slowly unfolding, notice how different medieval sleep feels compared to modern sleep. It was not about comfort or deep rest alone. It was about survival, belief, and meaning. Sleep was woven into religion, fear, and community. It was shared, watched, and protected. This made medieval sleep strange, broken, and cautious, but also deeply human. As the night grows quiet now, allow this ancient way of sleeping to fade gently into the background. You do not need to remember every detail. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and soft. Allow rest to continue in its own calm way, free from fear, free from meaning, free from effort. In the medieval world, sleep was never just about rest. It was deeply connected to fear, belief, and habit. As night arrived, people did not simply lie down and close their eyes. They prepared themselves carefully, because darkness was seen as a time when the world became less predictable. The night was believed to belong to unseen forces, spirits, and wandering dangers. Because of this, sleep was surrounded by rituals meant to protect the body and calm the mind. These habits may seem strange today, but to medieval people they felt necessary and comforting. Many believed that falling asleep without protection was dangerous. Before lying down, people often whispered short prayers or repeated familiar religious phrases. These were not spoken loudly or dramatically, but quietly, almost like a habit learned from childhood. The words were meant to guard the sleeper's soul while the body rested. Sleep was seen as a small kind of death, a state where the soul drifted and became vulnerable. These prayers helped people feel safer as they surrendered to rest. The position of the body during sleep also mattered. Many medieval people avoided sleeping flat on their backs, believing it invited bad dreams or spiritual harm. Side sleeping was common, especially on the right side, which was associated with goodness and order. Some believed that sleeping on the left side invited darker thoughts. These ideas shaped how people arranged themselves at night, often unconsciously, repeating the same positions night after night. Beds themselves were simple and shared. Families slept together, sometimes with servants or children all in one space. Privacy was rare, but familiarity brought comfort. The sounds of others breathing nearby helped calm the mind. Being alone at night felt unsafe, so shared sleep was preferred. Even strangers sometimes shared sleeping spaces at inns, not because it was comfortable, but because it felt safer than being alone. People also believed that certain objects placed near the bed could protect sleep. Small religious items, charms, or symbols were kept close. These objects were not always decorative. They carried emotional meaning. Knowing they were nearby helped people relax and let go of fear. The mind rested more easily when it felt guarded. Dreams were taken seriously. A bad dream was not dismissed as imagination. It was often believed to carry meaning or warning. Because of this, waking from a dream did not always lead back to sleep easily. Some people whispered prayers again before closing their eyes. Others stayed awake for a while, waiting for the feeling to pass. Sleep was not rushed. It unfolded slowly across the night, sometimes in segments. As you imagine these habits, notice how careful and intentional medieval sleep felt. It was not casual. It was layered with belief and routine. These rituals helped people feel prepared for the unknown. They gave structure to the night and made rest feel safer in a world full of uncertainty. As the night grows quiet now, let these images soften. You do not need to judge them or remember them clearly. Let them drift gently into the background. Allow your body to remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Sleep does not need protection now. It can arrive softly, on its own. In medieval times, sleep was not something people tried to control or improve. It was simply something that happened as part of life, shaped by darkness, routine, and the natural limits of the day. People did not lie awake worrying about how long they would sleep or whether their rest was deep enough. When the sun went down and work slowed, the body naturally followed. The night was not an enemy to fight or a problem to solve. It was a familiar space, quiet and expected, where the body was allowed to slow down without pressure. This made medieval sleep strange to modern minds, but deeply natural to those who lived it. One of the most unusual habits was how comfortable people were with waking during the night. Medieval sleepers often experienced what we would now call broken or segmented sleep. They slept for a few hours, woke up calmly in the middle of the night, and then returned to sleep again later. This waking period was not seen as insomnia. It was normal. People prayed quietly, talked softly, checked animals, or simply sat in stillness before lying down again. There was no panic, no frustration, and no effort to force sleep back. Because there was no anxiety around waking, sleep returned easily when the body was ready. Beds themselves were very different from what we imagine today. Many people did not sleep on raised beds at all. They slept on straw, wooden platforms, benches, or shared spaces near the fire. Comfort was simple and practical. Softness was not expected. Warmth mattered more than cushioning. People often slept sitting up slightly, supported by rolled cloth or rough pillows, believing this position helped breathing and digestion. To modern eyes, this looks uncomfortable, but medieval bodies adapted to it over time, resting deeply despite the hardness beneath them. Sleeping positions were shaped by belief as much as comfort. Many medieval people avoided sleeping fully flat, fearing it could invite sickness or weakness. Others believed certain directions were healthier, preferring to align their bodies with religious symbols or traditions. Sleep was closely tied to spiritual life. Before sleeping, prayers were common, not rushed or anxious, but slow and habitual. Nighttime was seen as a vulnerable moment, so sleep carried a sense of quiet respect rather than relaxation alone. Night clothing was minimal. Many slept in simple garments or partially clothed, depending on warmth and modesty. Privacy was rare. Families often shared sleeping spaces, sometimes entire households resting together in one room. This closeness reduced fear of the night. Sounds of breathing, movement, and fire created a background of safety. Being alone in silence was less common than shared stillness. This communal sleep may seem strange today, but it helped people feel protected and calm. Dreams were also treated differently. Medieval people did not analyze dreams deeply every night, but they respected them. Some believed dreams carried meaning. Others saw them as natural images of the mind at rest. There was less obsession with controlling thoughts before sleep. The mind was allowed to wander. Because daily life was physically demanding and mentally simpler, the mind often quieted on its own when darkness arrived. What makes these habits feel truly strange today is how little pressure surrounded sleep. There were no clocks dictating bedtime, no alarms forcing early waking for most people. Sleep followed the seasons, longer in winter, shorter in summer. This flexibility allowed the body to rest when it needed rest. Fatigue was answered with stillness, not caffeine or distraction. The night was trusted. As you imagine this medieval night settling around you, notice how calm it feels. There is no rush to fall asleep, no fear of waking, no effort to perfect rest. Just darkness, warmth, and time moving slowly. These strange habits worked because they were not habits at all, but natural responses to life without artificial light, constant noise, or endless demands. As the night grows quiet again, allow this image to soften and drift away. You do not need to remember every detail. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow rest to continue gently, the way medieval people allowed sleep to come, without force or worry. In medieval times, one of the strangest things by modern standards was that people did not expect sleep to be one long, unbroken stretch. Waking up in the middle of the night was completely normal and widely accepted. There was no panic, no frustration, and no fear that something was wrong. People understood that sleep came in parts, not as a single deep fall into unconsciousness. The night was long, dark, and quiet, and the body moved naturally through periods of rest and gentle wakefulness. This rhythm felt natural to them because their lives followed the sun and the seasons, not clocks or schedules. After going to sleep shortly after sunset, many people would wake up a few hours later, often around midnight. This waking period was calm and unhurried. The house was quiet, the fire low, and the world still. Instead of forcing themselves back to sleep, people used this time gently. Some prayed softly, believing this quiet hour was especially meaningful. Others talked quietly with family members, shared simple thoughts, or reflected on dreams. There was no rush to return to sleep, because the night still felt wide and open. This middle-of-the-night waking was not seen as insomnia. It was simply part of how the body rested. People trusted that sleep would return on its own, and it usually did. After some quiet time, they would lie down again and fall into a second sleep that carried them toward morning. This second sleep often felt deeper and more dream-filled, and people woke from it feeling restored. Because there were no clocks glowing in the dark and no artificial light to stimulate the mind, this waking period remained gentle. Firelight was soft and dim. Shadows moved slowly. The mind stayed calm. There was nothing pulling attention strongly in any direction. This made it easy to return to rest when the body was ready. As you imagine this rhythm now, notice how relaxed it feels. There is no pressure to sleep perfectly. There is no worry about waking. The night allows movement between rest and awareness without judgment. Medieval people did not fight their sleep. They listened to it. As the night grows quiet again, let this idea soften in your mind. Let the thought of gentle waking and easy returning to sleep feel natural and safe. You do not need to do anything. Just remain still. Let rest continue in its own time, the way it once did for so many people long ago. As medieval nights slowly drew to a close, sleep itself became less about habit and more about surrender. After long days shaped by labor, prayer, fear, and routine, people did not think about sleep as a choice. It simply arrived, the way darkness arrived, the way cold settled into stone walls, and the way silence spread through narrow streets. Beds were still uncomfortable, shared, or uneven, yet the body accepted them without complaint. Medieval people did not expect sleep to feel pleasant. They expected it to be necessary. This acceptance allowed the body to rest in ways that modern minds often struggle to understand. By this point in the night, most households were completely still. Fires had burned low, leaving only faint warmth. Animals slept close to humans, sharing body heat and quiet presence. Sleep was not isolated or private. It was shared, layered, and communal. Someone might wake briefly, shift position, whisper a prayer, or listen to the night sounds outside, then return to rest without worry. Waking was not considered a failure of sleep. It was simply part of the night's rhythm. Strange sleep habits that once felt normal now blended into the background of rest. Sleeping upright, sleeping in shifts, Sleeping fully clothed, or sleeping beside tools and belongings all felt natural. These habits existed not because medieval people were unaware of comfort, but because safety, warmth, and routine mattered more. Sleep adjusted itself to life, not the other way around. The body learned to rest wherever it was allowed to pause. Dreams, when they appeared, were accepted quietly. Some were remembered, others forgotten. There was no rush to analyze them deeply in the middle of the night. Reflection came later, if at all. The night itself was reserved for stillness. Thoughts softened, awareness drifted. The body recovered slowly, hour by hour, without effort. As you imagine this final stage of medieval sleep, notice how calm it feels despite its strangeness. There is no urgency, no pressure to sleep perfectly, and no fear of waking. Sleep happens because the world has slowed enough to allow it. Darkness holds everything gently without asking anything in return. As the night grows quieter now, allow this image to fade softly. You do not need to remember the habits, the details, or the history. Let them rest where they belong. Your body already knows how to slow down. Let it remain still. Let your breathing stay easy and natural. Allow rest to continue quietly, in its own time, just as it has done for people across centuries. As we slowly arrive at the end of this long and quiet journey, it becomes clear that medieval sleep, strange as it may seem to us now, was deeply shaped by necessity, belief, and the natural rhythm of the world. There were no strict rules about sleep being one solid block of time. Instead, rest flowed in segments shaped by darkness, silence, and the limits of the human body. Medieval people did not fight the night. They lived inside it. Sleep came, went, and returned again, without anxiety or pressure. What feels unusual today once felt completely normal then. For medieval people, the night was not something to escape from quickly. It was long, dark, and expected to be shared with waking moments. People slept early, woke naturally in the middle of the night, prayed, talked quietly, reflected, or simply lay still, and then returned to sleep again. This pattern did not worry them. There was no clock demanding uninterrupted rest. The body decided when to sleep and when to wake. In this way, rest felt more forgiving even when conditions were uncomfortable. Sleeping positions and places also reflected this acceptance. People slept sitting up, lying on hard surfaces, sharing beds with family, strangers, or animals, and sometimes sleeping near fire or completely in the cold. These habits were not chosen for comfort, but for survival, warmth, and safety. Over time, the body adapted. Sleep did not depend on softness, it depended on familiarity. Even strange habits became soothing once they were repeated night after night. Belief played a quiet role as well. Night was seen as a time closer to the spiritual world. Dreams were meaningful. Waking in the dark was not feared, but often respected. People believed the night allowed space for reflection, prayer, and connection with thoughts that daylight distracted from. Sleep was not just physical rest, it was mental and spiritual stillness as well. As centuries passed and modern life slowly reshaped how humans sleep, many of these habits disappeared. Beds became softer, nights became brighter. Sleep became measured, controlled, and often stressed over. Yet the human body still carries the memory of those older rhythms. Waking briefly at night, needing less structure, or finding comfort in repetition are not problems. They are echoes of how humans once rested naturally. As you lie here now, listening quietly, your body is doing what it has always known how to do. It is slowing down. It is letting go. It is resting in its own way. You do not need to force sleep to look a certain way. Just like medieval people, rest can arrive gently, leave briefly, and return again. This story does not end with a dramatic conclusion. It ends the way medieval nights often did, softly, quietly, without urgency. The past can now fade back into darkness, where it belongs, leaving you with nothing to do except rest. Let your breathing stay slow. Let your body feel heavy. Let the night finish its work. Good night, and sleep peacefully.